Hi everyone, and welcome to the Monomyth Diaries, a bi-monthly podcast where ordinary people get to share their hero's journey. I'm Mandy.
And I'm Karen, and we'll be your hosts. Each episode will feature a hero who will share their journey of growth.
We'll hear stories about forgiveness, survival, determination, and much more.
We're glad you're joining us because we all have a monomyth to share and someone out there needs to hear it. Welcome back to the Monomyth Diaries, where it's a take what you like and leave the rest podcast. Today we had the opportunity to take the show on the road. Mandy, can you tell us where are we?
Absolutely. We are recording today from the Cottages, which is a co-working space here in Katy, Texas, and it is owned by Hi Ho and Cyndi Din, some friends of mine. Cyndi and I met each other actually through our husbands, and she has an absolutely incredible story to share with you today. We found it truly inspirational, and we hope y'all do too.
Please join us as we welcome Cyndi to our podcast.
Cyndi, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
I'm so glad. We're going to start off with some Monomyth story starters. We're going to ask you a series of quick questions. You feel free to elaborate if you want. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So Cyndi, sweet or savory?
Sweet.
What's one thing you can't live without?
My kids.
What is your dream vacation?
Oh, I love being like near water. So, I don't necessarily have to be in the water. So something beachy, anywhere really. Nice, warm, balmy.
What's your favorite way to spend a Sunday?
Well, we normally go to church and it's just a relaxed day. No cleaning, cooking, just go to church, come home, relax with the family. Maybe some board games. That's fun too.
No work.
No work,
Especially board games. If you could live in any time period, when would it be?
I would have to say when Jesus actually was here on this earth and was able to walk, I would have loved to have met him.
Yeah.
And experience that.
I love that. I would not think to do that. What's your biggest pet peeve?
That's hard. Let's see. What do I get annoyed about the most? Probably right now would be people who are just not nice to other people for no reason on social media. Like, you don't have to say anything if you don't have anything nice to say. But like, why do you feel the need to say something negative? I don't know. It's just that would be my pet peeve.
So Cyndi, what is your favorite childhood memory?
I grew up surrounded by a lot of cousins, and especially being born in the year of the dragon, and so I have a lot of male cousins, and so we would be outdoors a lot. I was considered a tomboy, so I would climb trees, and there was this magnolia tree that we would just sometimes climb, and if you know anything about magnolia flowers, before it blooms, you can actually peel it out, and there's like this, the pollen, like the yellow pollen, we use it as grenades. Just throwing that. Anyways, it made for a messy yard, but
I had no idea you could do that.
no, yeah, we should try that. We have a lot of magnolia trees on our at home, so we could try that one day.
Is that what produces all the yellow pollen that we get all over our cars?
I don't know, but no, I don't think so. I don't know.
Okay, I was curious. You know that time of year in Texas where everything is covered in that yellow?
Yeah.
Your car, your windows, everything.
No, it's the actual magnolia flowers, but I could be wrong. I have to look that up now. I don't know.
A magnolia, little pollen bombs.
Pollen bombs, yes. That would be one of my memories.
What's something on your bucket list?
Bucket list. I would love to go to Rome. And, just, I don't know, just go and, explore. I would love to go. Yeah.
Awesome.
On my bucket list.
Me too.
Okay, we can go together.
Yes. So if you had one wish, what would it be?
One wish. I know world peace is kind of like, everyone's like, go-to answer. I guess for me it would be just, having like my family get together, including my mom and dad, because they're divorced now, to really be at peace with it, to be accepting of it. And, because we have this conversation like, well, what if the grandkids get married? Who do we invite? Grandma or grandpa? And it's always a difficult thing when it's not about us. It's about the bride and the groom for that day or for any occasion. It doesn't have to be a wedding. But just to be able to come together and not really drag the past in, because the past is the past.
Mhm.
We were who we were back then, and we're different now. We can accept the past and just move forward. So that would be my wish.
Okay.
I love that.
More practical, right?
The
A
world peace.
beautiful one, though.
Yeah.
For sure. What's your biggest fear?
Well, of course, death comes to us all, but my biggest fear would probably be not dying necessarily, but getting sick to where I'm here, but not like I'm physically here, but mentally I'm gone, and not being, then putting that burden on my kids. I think that's a big fear of mine, not wanting to burden them with taking care of me physically. So
Yeah.
You are so thoughtful.
I have to consider that, because it's so, when people think of dying, I mean, at least it's a finale, like, there's closure. But when you're physically not able to help yourself and someone has to care for you, that's hard. So, yeah.
I think that might be all my questions.
That was it.
I'm okay. I thought it would be harder. I'm like, oh, that's hard questions.
Right. So, Cyndi, we're so glad to have you here. Can you tell us a little bit about your childhood and what cultural expectations were for you in your family and in your community?
Sure. And so my parents are from Vietnam. They came over during the fall of Saigon in April of 1975. At that time, it was just my sister. She was under one. And so imagine a family of three with a little, not even a toddler yet, coming and just really creating a whole brand new life here in America. We were sponsored by a family in Wisconsin. And from there, my parents did move south for opportunities in New Orleans, which is where I was born, a year later. And with that, my parents were just trying to make ends meet. It was really difficult financially for them. They didn't speak the language, they didn't understand the culture. And being born in between that, so I first generation born in America, so there was expectations, right? Expectations from our motherland, being Vietnamese, and then being in the land of the free. So, I mean, I was kind of that first generation where I was born with the expectations of how women, or just as a female, I guess I can speak on behalf of being a female, versus being born here in America. There's a lot of cultural differences.
Yeah.
I did have my parents by 1982. We were a family of seven, so I have three younger brothers. So it was my sister, myself, and three younger brothers, and so I can tell like how my parents treated the boys versus how, and not that they didn't love us, it was just different love, a different kind of expectation. Just like any group of generation, it's just the cycle, right? My mom was born and raised as a housewife. Those are her expectations: to be dutiful, to be obedient, to be submissive. Those were some of the traits that she was trying to pass down on to me.
Right.
And so growing up, it was difficult because, I was watching a lot of shows like The Cosby Show, and, the roles of a female there in those shows are a little bit different than what my mom was expecting of me. Like, I was expected to learn how to cook and to clean and to cater and to serve. It was those duties that I resisted. And I don't know if I was just being a teen, being resistant of those expectations. But while my brother, on the other hand, well, after dinner, they got to leave their plate, get up, and do whatever they want to do. So I felt a lot of, just this push and pull. I want to help my mom. On the other hand, it's like, why I want to be like the boys. And as I was sharing earlier, I grew up with a lot of boys around me, three brothers and a lot of cousins who were dragons, because I was born in the year of the dragon. And so I definitely felt like I want to be like the boys. I just want to eat and get up and go play. Why not, right? Why can't I be like them? So there was a lot of that growing up. I mean, I thought we were all equal. We were living in the land of the free. I'm free. I should be free to do all these things. So that was kind of my childhood growing up. I mean, I can definitely see the difference in how my parents raised me and my brothers. The boys are going to be taking on the name of the family. They're going to carry on, it's a very patriarchal, like it's not created equally or fair, in my opinion, as I was growing up. And I was, probably a really bitter teen.
So do you feel, in your culture, do you feel like women are seen as less than?
Yes, I do feel like we were seen to be at less of a value, less valuable. Like I said, I just guess it's a different type of value, whereas we're valued to be the homemaker, we're valued to be the nurturers, we're valued to serve and to take care of the family. Those were the expectations.
Mhm.
As a female growing up in America, there was that struggle between like, the expectation of being, the motherland expectation versus the land of the free expectation, the Vietnamese culture versus the American culture. There was just
some duality.
Yes, and it was a struggle for me because I was the firstborn here in America. So there was definitely a generational conflict between, the Vietnamese culture and the American culture for me.
And you mentioned before that you moved quite a bit when you were younger too.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes. We moved around quite a bit. When my parents first came to America, we were in Wisconsin, and then, they moved south for opportunities in New Orleans, and then from there back up north, and then to Oklahoma, to Florida, to California. And it was a constant move. And part of it is I understand of the opportunities. And then they also were looking for where are their families at? When they all came to America, they were all just kind of, they moved where the sponsors were. And so sometimes the sponsors were not. And I don't know, can you imagine back in the 70s, we didn't have internet. We didn't have the kind of communication tools that we have today.
Mhm.
So it was just more of like when they hear, oh, my family is in, California. Let me move there and be with them. And it's a comfort thing, right? When you have family who understands and, can help you and you can kind of stay together. So we constantly stayed together almost like in our own bubble
Right.
as we started moving around. But yeah, we moved around quite a bit. So I had to, it's like every time we moved, could be in the middle of a school year.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be, oh, let's wait for summer to come around and then we move. No, it's just like, hey, we're going to move and we'll just pick up and go. So that was a challenge as well. Making friends and the stability of it, it was constant changes.
Mhm. How did observing your mom's experiences shape your understanding of gender roles for you?
Um, I may have mentioned like my parents fought a lot growing up.
Mhm.
And part of it, or probably a big part of it, was related to financial stress, right? Constantly trying to make ends meet and the struggle of, not really speaking the language and being a caregiver of 5 kids is not easy. And so my mom on one hand is trying to feed and support and teach and raise the kids and, between two cultures, that she's trying to learn as well. And then my dad trying to make ends meet with working 2 jobs or multiple jobs sometimes. I think with my mom and being, that, she too was trying to learn the difference in, okay, I'm not in Vietnam anymore. And
Mhm.
part of her, her, when she was raised, she was taught, when you get married, you're part of the husband's family and adapt to the husband's family's lifestyle, or you are serving the family. You're no longer part of your parents' family.
Right.
And so regardless of how they treat you, how they talk to you, how, my dad could hit my mom. It physically hurt her. And it's partially is, it's her fault. Like, well, you should have not talked back, or you should have, done this, or it's always like what she shouldn't or should have done. So seeing that, it was really hard for me to accept because, again, I watched a lot of TV shows where the husband, was really respectful to the wife, or the wife was able to voice her opinions or her thoughts without really a lot of consequence other than mutual respect for that person's thoughts and, actions. So I think in short, I feel like my mom's life
Mhm.
and the way she was raised and how she really carried out her duties as a wife, as a daughter-in-law, as a mom, was really to not also lose face, because being in the Vietnamese culture, losing face was a big thing.
Right.
Like, you don't do anything that will, even though she's no longer part of her family after she marries off, she's definitely not allowed to do anything that will bring a bad name to the family that she's left. So that was really difficult too. It's like you're damn if you do and damn if you don't kind of thing. So you endure, you accept, and you just, even if she were to go home to her mom and dad, if she was in a physical um, abusive relationship, the parents will then say, you need to go back to your family.
And it's expected.
It is expected.
I know you briefly said that when you're younger, that you knew you didn't want to be like your mom, because you're witnessing these things, and obviously you don't like them. They make you uncomfortable. But you also told me before that you didn't have a particular role model. How do you think you got to the point where you knew that you didn't want to be your mom? Like, what's influencing you? Because you're in a Vietnamese culture with other Vietnamese people, right? You said you constantly moved to be with people that speak your language, are culturally similar. How do you think you got there?
Well, seeing what my mom had to endure in her relationship with my dad, I definitely didn't want to be a housewife. That's what I was like. If being a housewife means you don't have a voice, you don't have, you can't share your thoughts, you have to be, obedient and, be a servant. I knew I just didn't want to be that. I didn't want the physical and the mental abuse of being in that kind of relationship, because I associated that with being a wife and a housewife. Right. Um, and so, again, I was watching a lot of different TV shows, and I saw the mutual respect of the husband and wife in a lot of those shows. And I know it's just a show, but that was my glimpse into what American culture looked like.
Okay.
And growing up, again, I was in this bubble where I was surrounded by cousins whose parents were also going through the same thing my mom and dad was going through.
Okay.
It was very similar, stories, just different households. And so I just thought that was normal. I wanted out. I wanted different. I just wanted to be like the Cosbys. And I didn't really have like a true role model, because we lived in this bubble. Same family, same story, just different addresses. I wanted to break out of that bubble to see what life is on the other side. When people have asked me, well, if you had 3 doors, which door would you choose? And if I knew this door already looked like my mom and dad's, I'm like, I don't look that door. I'm going to try the other door. And it was a risk, right? It's a risk. And I didn't know. But that was kind of where in my mind, my little, immature brain at that time was like, this is not what I wanted.
So here you're already reacting and pushing against these rules and these kind of expectations. When was this happening? Like, ballpark, how old were you? What part of your life?
My earliest childhood memory of the physical fighting was probably when I was maybe 4 or 5. It was before I went to school, for sure.
Wow.
Yeah, we were young. All of us were really young. Just my dad would just at dinner sometimes just flip tables, because they got into an argument. And, we're expected to clean the mess. I want to say the most impactful one that I remember that really just shook me to the core was when I was likely in 4th or 5th grade. They got into an argument about something, and I know my grandmother, my aunt, they were all there, and he still was like not able to control his temper. And, next thing you know, like the cops, the ambulance were there. My mom was really hurt. And it was just that moment of, wow, like this has gotten really out of hand. And I remember my mom, like after she got back from the hospital, she was so angry and heard that she picked us all up, packed us all our stuff. We were living in Louisiana at this time. She got I guess, a one-way bus trip from there all the way back up north to Wisconsin, to where our sponsor family was, to kind of get help. And I remember it was a long bus ride. And I got so sick. I get motion sickness. So I was super sick in the car sick. And then when we got there, we were in a battered woman shelter. I didn't know what it was called at that time, but now that, I look back, oh yeah, that's what it really was. It was just a shelter for battered women. And I got so homesick there too. I just remember being sick all the time. I don't know quite how long we were there, but I knew that my mom was trying to seek help,
Yeah.
trying to reach out for someone to help her. And there was all five of us, remember there was like my sister, me, and my three younger brothers. So we were there for a short period of time. And then all I remember is next thing you know, my dad shows up and then we're flying home back to Louisiana.
So you're talking about this incident that like you're in elementary school, you're
Mhm.
fourth or fifth grade. Your grandmother, your aunts, your family are all there, and the police come up, and then you guys get away for a bit, and then your dad pulls you back. What kind of messages were you getting from all of this? That from your family, from your community, that's telling you about your worth?
Um, I think as a woman and seeing that, I felt like my mom was saying that her worth is only as good as what her husband um, gives her. Like, that you got to just accept and endure, whatever it is and however he treats you. And I'm sure my dad was like, I'm going to try to change. I'm going to, do certain things to try to make things better. I want, like promises. Um, and and so for us, it was more of, what my mom needed him too, in a way, right? She financially couldn't support herself or her five kids, and we were so young at that time. And I'm sure there was a part of her that said, well, I have to, try to make this work, one, not to lose face, right? Because divorce was just a big no-no in the family. It was not accepted. And on top of that, my mom was, we were born and raised Catholic. And so a religious aspect of that kind of was intertwined with the cultural aspect of, well, you till death do us part.
So your mom probably felt this compelling to stay.
Yes. Yes. And so there was probably a mixture of all of that. And so I have to say, when it came to our worth and our value, it was just in a place where, if you can just sacrifice a little bit more, it's all about sacrifice. Or we were expected to sacrifice. As a mom, we're sacrificing. As a daughter, you're sacrificing. As a wife, you're sacrificing. You got to sacrifice your happiness, sacrifice your worth and your value and your joy and your whatever. You just got to sacrifice it for the sake of your family.
At the cost of your safety?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well,
I know, that's so unfortunate.
yeah, and I don't think in most people's mind, especially like, talking to my aunts and uncle, they're like, well, you know, they're not going to go that far. You know what I mean? People just don't expect, like, yeah, he got angry, he hurt me, he didn't mean to break my arm. I think that's their mindset was just, we've gone through it, it doesn't get that bad. The worst it gets is, maybe a bruise or a broken arm, kind of thing.
They minimize it.
They minimize it. Yes, they do.
So this carries on this sort of interaction between your mom and dad all of your childhood.
Yes, they were married for 40 something years.
And then, so this carries on into high school. And I know
Yes.
at one point you said that you moved again because you did high school in Texas, right?
My sister was a teenager before I was. She got a lot of the brunt of, what's the word? I wouldn't say abuse, but punishment. And because, she was a teenager first, right?
Right.
And so she ran away from home. And so there was a move from Louisiana to Texas to kind of help contain that. So we moved to this tiny little town called Palacios. And that was between my 8th grade, 9th grade year. And so just imagine again, here's another big move. I'm about to go into high school and I'm expected to leave all, the friends that I made in the last few years in Louisiana to start a new life, a new, identity, whatever it is, in this small town called Palacios in Texas here. And it was, I think for us, my mom and dad was just like, well, again, sacrifice, right? My mom has to sacrifice. but that means we all have to learn how to sacrifice. We have to sacrifice for what they thought was best. And yeah, the abuse, and it didn't matter where we were at. You know, my dad, when he was angry, if it was something my sister did, then I got, you know, a lot of that as well. Because then she left, she's like, I'm not dealing with this, I'm leaving. And so for me, it was like, okay, my dad's angry now, and he just, you know, I look back and I question, like, even if he was mad at her, he's like, well, you know, I'm going to do this to teach you so that you don't run away and you don't, you know, and it was like, but I'm not her, you know, like in my mind at that time, I was, you know, I think it was more of like, I didn't do anything to deserve this punishment. You know, why are you hurting me? And it could be anything that triggered him at the time. And so I just remember I was a senior in high school. And you know, at that time, we didn't have cell phones. And so if we had friends, they'll just have to call the house. And then, you know, both lines, my dad could pick up on one line and, you know, I could be picking up the other line. Well, someone had called, and my younger brother is named Timmy, the one right after me. And I'm Cyndi. So it sounds similar if you say it really fast.
Right.
And so there was a guy, his friend called and asked for Timmy. And my dad thought that he was asking for Cyndi. And he didn't ask any questions. And it was just that, like, he came and, you know, started hitting me closed fist and just was like, how dare you lie to me? You're seeing someone. Like, I wasn't allowed to date. I wasn't allowed to see anyone, because he was fearful that I would be like my sister, you know, run off and lose space for the family. There's all these, right? And, you know, and when my dad's in that state, there's nothing you can say. You're not supposed to, you know, you're supposed to be like, you know, he's going to punish you, and then he'll ask questions later. And, you know, my during that time, so I was in the the dance team for 3 years. And so when you're in your dance team, you're wearing like sleeveless stuff, you know, and I felt so ashamed going to school. You know, I was one of those kids where like, oh, where'd you get that bruise? How'd you hurt yourself? And then you just have to like make something up. Oh, you know, I bruise easily. I, you know, ran into the wall, you know, like I was one of those kids just having to explain what happened. So during that period of time, you know, again, I know that's why I probably is so, to this day, I can understand like a teenager's mindset, because I know I'm not mature enough to understand everything, but I also felt, I can remember the feelings, you know, during that period of time. It was just so raw for me. And I was so bitter and angry too, though. And, you know, one of the things that I kept telling myself was, I just cannot wait to leave. I can't wait to graduate. I can't wait to get out. I don't want it to be like this. I want it to be different.
It sounds like one of the patterns in your parents' marriage were making geographical solutions. And I think you told me once that you tend to do the same thing. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, absolutely. As soon as I graduated from high school, the day after, I was ready to move. So my solution was, I'm going to move to go off to college, and not just to any college. I'm like, I'm going to be as far away as I can be. And so my parents were living in Palacios, Texas at that time.
Right.
And I had family that was going to Louisiana State University, LSU. So my bright idea was, I'm going to just move over there and go to school with them. And growing up, you know, the value of a female going to college was not something that they had planned for. So for me, they were like, well, their expectation was, I'm going to, you know, get married, have kids, and stay home with the kids as a housewife.
I can imagine they weren't happy with you going to college.
No, they were not very supportive. If anything, they thought I was wasting my money and my time and effort and not being obedient. And so I left anyway, without their support, without any money, no 529 plan saved for me, no car. It was just, okay, if you want to go, go. So I did work my way through college. I worked at a grocery store while I went to, you know, classes, but I made it work. And that was my first big move. I didn't have anything. That was my first experience into the real world.
Did you stay at studio? the whole time?
I did not. I was there for about a year and a half or so, and then my younger brother finally graduated to me. He actually graduated, and my parents at that point said, "Okay, if you're really going to go to college, why don't you come back to Houston, and you and your brother can get an apartment together and help each other through college."
Okay.
And so, they got him a car. They're like helping him and supporting him through college. So it was kind of like, well, why not stay together and help each other out? So that was my move back into Houston. But again, I felt, okay, well, my parents are not living in Houston. I can still, create a life of my own. It's okay. And so that was my move back, was to help my brother and really help myself get, and finish. So I did finish off at the University of Houston here.
So you once again saw that you weren't worth as much because your parents were willing to help your brother.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So that, it's very common for them to talk about, well, what does my boys need? They're going to need college education. They're going to need a car. They're going to need help. I mean, to this day, sometimes mom's like, can you give your brother some gas money?
Wow.
So it's about like what they need, how to support them. They need you to, call them to invite them to dinner. It's always about what I need to do to help them.
Help the boys.
And I love my brothers. I got along with them great. I don't fault them. It's just that like constant, like my mom or dad's always like, oh, what about your, when they see me, the first thing is like, well, you talked to your brothers lately? How's he doing? It's like, what about your daughter?
For real.
So it could be hurtful, but I like I said, maybe me in my teens, I was angry and bitter about that. But looking back, it's kind of like, okay, I get it. That was just instilled in them. And I felt like I needed to break that. I'm the in-between generation, right? Like I had that conflict. I mean, I get the old, but now this is the new, and we both, are equal. Like women and men, we're female, male, it doesn't matter. And so, and I guess in our culture, it's also like the male or the groom pays for the wedding, whereas the bride, because the bride is actually, going from their family to the men or to the groom side of the family. So
Right.
Okay.
it's interesting. Yeah.
Speaking of,
Yeah.
so you're in college and you meet your first husband.
I did. I was, so I ended up, just financially, I moved in and I started living with someone I was dating. His name was Joseph. And so my first husband, and living with him, as soon as I graduated from college, it was more like, well, you live with him, you have to marry him now. First of all, living with him was a no-no when my parents found out. They're like, oh my gosh, you're living with someone, out of wedlock, and it's, frowned upon. And so the parents got together, shortly, after I graduated from college and said, well, especially my mom, and she took me aside and said, your worth as a woman is no longer as valued or valuable because now you live with one who wants someone who's lived with another man.
Oh, wow.
Or has been with another man. You need to go ahead and just marry him because I was living with him as though I was married already.
So he's also Vietnamese, am I assuming?
Yes.
So both his parents and your parents kind of met up to discuss what you guys should do. Am I reading this right?
Yes, but it wasn't arranged marriage by any means, but it was more like, encouraged.
You were expected to marry him.
Yeah. Yeah, it was more like, and we were both young, and maybe their influence was like, well, you guys can just make it work. All right, you guys have been living together already, so it shouldn't be that difficult now that to just actually get married and start a family. And again, it goes back to my mom and dad's mindset of, okay, well, you did your college thing, you got that out of your system. Now it's time to settle down, have kids, and really focus on the family.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you want to marry him?
I cared about him and I loved him, but I was not ready to get married. And so when he actually first proposed that idea, I said, no, I don't think we're ready. I didn't think I was ready at that time. And so when I said no, like the parents and even his grandma was like, what do you mean no? Like, that's the next step. That's the next expectation. And because culturally, by the time, well, my mom wasn't even expected to go to college, right? Or even high school for that matter. So going to college was already like a big step. So they're like, okay, well, your next step, you really should have been already married. You're going to be an old maid. Who's going to want you, now? Like you're no longer worthy, like, of someone who has never lived with someone who's, they want someone who's going to be submissive and obedient.
Whoa.
And I'm not that.
So she actually says these things out loud to you.
It sounds like it's not just your mom saying this stuff. It sounds like, his family is also saying these things.
And again, I don't want them to sound like they are bad people. I think this is just a cultural norm.
Sure.
This is their norm. And one of the things that really was just like sealed the deal, I remember his grandmother was in the hospital and we went to go visit her and she just took my hand and she just said, it's okay if you think that you're going to, really know someone before you marry, that's not going to happen. It's okay to get married and then find out who they are. And I'm not saying that Joseph was a bad person. He's just, we were just so young. We were too young. We were not ready.
So how long were you married?
Yeah, we ended up getting married and we were not married very long before I got pregnant and had my first daughter, Lindsay. I started changing. My life was for my kid now.
Yeah,
It was,
I can understand that.
It's a sacrifice and you see the world from a different perspective. And so I started, there's no more, going out late, friends over all the time. I mean, your life now revolves around this child.
Yeah.
But number one, my first husband his lifestyle didn't change. He was still, partying and gambling. And, I think the gambling part was really what got me. And we were only married maybe a year and a half, 2 years. We were trying to save up for a home. We had a baby. We were trying to move along financially. And I was trying to, really progress in my career. Like now I'm a career trying to, make a name for myself out in the corporate world. And then I have a daughter that I'm trying to take care of. There was a constant juggle there. And then here my, husband was like, at that time, he was just living as if he's in college still. What really damaged the marriage was when I found out that he spent all the savings.
Oh.
And we had a bank statement that came in that had negative dollars in the bank account. And, again, growing up, I saw the financial fights that my parents had and, how it escalated so fast. And I didn't want finances to be a problem in my marriage. Like I felt like we shouldn't have these financial issues, but yet we are. And the worst part of it is that he's lying about it. He told me that the bank made the mistake, that there's got to be a mistake. We don't have negative dollars. And I'm like, I don't think the bank would make that kind of mistake. And I might be even naive, but I'm not stupid, And so that kind of escalated. And then we kind of grew apart after that. And then he started seeing someone else. And I think it was just, I wasn't angry, upset, surprisingly. I was more of like, hey, let's just sit down with our parents because I had to ask for the parents' permission if we're not going to do this together anymore.
You had to request permission from both sets of parents?
Yeah, I was scared. And so I called a meeting, like it was a business meeting, and I had all of the facts in front of me with here's the girl's name, here's the issues that we're having, and I don't think that I can move forward with this marriage for these reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And in that meeting, I remember afterwards, my mom and dad said, okay, well, your options are you go back to him and you work on the marriage, or you come home and live with us. Those are my options.
Oh my goodness.
And remember,
and how old are you?
I was, at that time, I was probably 27, 28.
You're still very young.
Yeah, I was really young still because I had Lindsay when I was 25. And so just a few years after that, I was like, this is not working. And I would like a divorce. And I don't think that, and I didn't want him to be unhappy. Like if you found someone else that you're happier with, go be with her. That was my take on it. It's like, I don't think we both need to be miserable in this marriage.
Right.
And I think a lot of it was, okay, well, no one's in my family has ever really filed for divorce. And it's definitely the religious aspect of it was like, you're going to be a sinner. You're going to be shunned for life. You're, an embarrassment to the family. There's all these things that I felt like, okay, well, even my mom stayed, right, in her marriage that she has not been happy in. And I shouldn't assume that she wasn't happy, but it's just the things that I'm seeing, like the physical abuse of it.
Right.
I'm like, should I endure it? Like I felt like I had to stay, but also that pull of, well, he's already with someone else. Like, why do I need to be with him? And so I didn't choose either route. I chose not to be with him, and I chose not to move home with my parents at that time. And it was a difficult time and period in my life because, one, I didn't have it. We had negative dollars in the bank account. My parents didn't agree with the divorce. No one agreed with the divorce, really. And then
Except Joseph?
He was kind of just nonchalant about it, right? Like it was, yeah, I'll stay with you and I don't have to see this person anymore, but do I have to accept that? And in my heart was starting to really harden when it came to like, well, why do I have to go with what everyone else says?
Yeah.
And I truly was not happy at that time. And I was definitely starting to, like I said, there was a lot of built up bitterness and anger. And I said, I knew I didn't want to live a life of misery for myself or for him. Like I care about him enough to say, you know what, if you're happier with someone else, to go be happy.
Yeah. And you decide to move into an apartment by yourself. How'd you get there?
It was hard. I didn't have the credit. I didn't have the money to move in. And I remember because I didn't have the credit, I had to put an extra deposit down in order to secure the rent for the one bedroom. And I had a friend. She was so sweet and kind to me. And we were all just trying to make ends meet. We were only in our 20s. And she said, I'm gonna lend you the money. And that was the first time anyone's ever lent me money, where to help me. And so I borrowed her money and I told her, I said, I'm going to pay you back as soon as I get, I'm settled in and, the next couple months I'm going to save up and I'm going to pay you back the deposit that I borrowed. And I remember during that period of time, it was getting closer to Christmas. And so I'm like, I'm not going to spend on anything. I'm not going to celebrate Christmas or the holidays. I'm just going to try to get a place. And I remember my friend donated a couch. And so that was the couch we had. We had a one bedroom. So Lindsay and I slept in the same room. We had a bed and that was it. I didn't even have a dining room table. And so it was just, hey, just to get out though, I needed to be in my own place. And so during Christmas, I feel like Christmas has always been a reminder of the gift that my friend Amanda had given me. She was the one who lent me the money. And she never said when I had to repay her, but I repaid her. And so that Christmas, I said, oh, I don't need a Christmas tree. Lindsay doesn't need any presents under the tree. It's okay. This is a gift of just being away from all of that and being in peace. And that was the real true joy of it. But she showed up with a few other friends one weekend and had a live tree with all the decorations in it. And that was a moment for me that said, people, it wasn't always about the money. It's just showing up. I think showing up for me in the way that she did will always remind me of how special Christmas is. Because for her, she didn't have to. She didn't have to spend that money on me because she too was going through her own things. And I felt so blessed to be able to have her and, round up friends to come over to help me decorate and really make that Christmas a true Christmas blessing. And so I'll never forget the way she made me feel, more importantly, but the help that she gave me when I needed it most.
Wow. Angel and human skin.
Yeah. And to this day, I try not to remind her every Christmas. It is her birthday during, right after the holidays. But, she would never, I guess I don't know how to express how much of a blessing she is to me. Like, I can never repay her for the things that she's been able to, give me when I needed it.
Mm-hmm.
So, sometimes during Christmas, I like to bring up the stories. She's like, oh, don't say that. I don't, it's like you don't understand how much of an impact.
Yeah.
Because what are my other options if she didn't help me?
Yeah, she absolutely changed the trajectory of your life.
Yes.
Yeah. Would you say that was like the defining moment of when you actually broke free from a lot of those constraints you were feeling like you had to stay in your marriage and so much pressure, that this angel came in and helped give you freedom?
Yeah, I definitely felt like it was another stepping stone towards that. I made a slew of other mistakes along the way, but I met someone in New York and we started, traveling to and from to see each other. And he brought up, he's like, well, we've been seeing each other. Well, we think about having you try living in New York. And here's another geographical solution, right? Because there was so much shame and embarrassment to the family that I created by going through my divorce with husband number one.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it was like, okay, if I move to New York, no one knows me. I can start over.
Mm-hmm.
I can start over. No judgment. No one giving me, these looks. I don't have to hear my parents and family tell me, how much of a disappointment and I didn't have to, and I fell away from the Catholic Church because I felt like I was too much of a shame or embarrassment to the family to actually enter. And so I kind of just started really putting all of that behind me when I moved up to New York.
Mm-hmm.
I think you said at one point your mom said you could not take communion.
Right. So as a, divorcee, you're a sinner. So when you're a sinner, you cannot receive communion in the Catholic Church. And so if I go to church, I'm not, the communion is just receiving the body and blood of Jesus Christ during service.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wasn't able to receive. So that was part of like, well, why am I going to church?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm no longer welcomed here, then I'm not going to go. It was a constant reminder of not being good enough.
Right.
It was a constant reminder that I'm not worthy. That was where I just stopped going to Catholic church and really move even further away from my belief in Jesus and my walk, with him.
You're living in New York.
Yep, I moved to New York with Lindsay and I found a job because I knew, again, I cannot financially depend on a man because I didn't want that. I wanted that separation of dependency. And everything is going fine. And, this person, let's just call him husband number two, was such a passionate and a Prince Charming. His family, really accepted me again. When I went through the divorce, if I, remember even before I got married, if I was already living with someone, I was no longer worthy.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt like I wasn't already good enough. And now I have a daughter and I'm divorced. I mean, that's even like,
Mm-hmm.
like who's going to accept me?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So when I met Kevin, he was really kind to Lindsay and that really warmed my heart. He was accepting of the fact that I've been married and I have a kid, and then his family also accepted that. So I felt
that must feel really nice.
it did. It felt really nice. And so that was the decision to move up there. Now, once I moved up there, living together and being out of my element was really difficult for me too.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was some challenges there. Financially we were okay, but I felt like there was conversations that he and I would have, but it escalated really fast to where he reminded me a lot of my dad. Had a very short fuse.
Mm.
And I remember, we were just simply talking about something simple like in order to save money, maybe you get on my phone plan. And I think there was some trigger there that caused him to really get heated and upset. And all of a sudden he just slapped me. And it was, again, the first time since my dad that a man had hit me.
Oh my goodness.
And so it was a shock.
Yeah.
Because that never happened with
No,
Joseph.
No, Joseph never hit me or, mistreated me physically or anything like that. He just was a party animal. We were young. So when that happened, it was a shock and I felt super alone, but I had Lindsay and I did get up to leave. I left with her. I went out to the car and I sat there, and it was New York. It was cold and it was snowing, and it was, even if the car engine was on, you can still feel, how cold it was, and especially if the car was idle. And I'm like, I don't even know where I'm going. Like, I didn't have any family or friends up in New York. And so again, here I am. It was a geographical solution, I thought, getting away. But then I'm here and I'm now in a situation where do I go? I didn't know where to go. And so after a little while being in the car, and of course, Lindsay's in the back seat and she's not understanding what's going on. And I felt my heart ache so bad because then I was left with the decision, like, do I go back inside? Do I go back?
How old was Lindsay here?
Lindsay she was probably 5 or 6 at that time.
Oh, wow.
So she's not a baby.
And you're not married yet?
No, not at the time. We were engaged to be married. And so I was left with the decision of like, what do I do? So I ended up going back inside because I'm like, I can't let Lindsay freeze to death. It's not her fault. She didn't she didn't create this. And so I got inside and we talked about it, Kevin and I, but I remember that thought of like, when my mom was going through her challenges, remember when we went to Wisconsin and my dad came to get us, I would always constantly ask, like, why did she go back? Why is she going back to someone who's hurting her?
Right.
And so in that moment, I remembered. In that moment, I'm like, because she's thinking about us as her kids. Where is she going to go? What is she going to do? And so for me, it was more of, where am I going to go with Lindsay? Even if I do decide to leave and geographically move again to solve this problem, what do I do with Lindsay in the meantime? This is my home now, right? I have to go back. And so
you can understand why your mom sacrificed.
Yes. And so that moment of putting my pride aside, putting my anger aside, putting everything that I was feeling aside.
Your worth aside.
My worth aside, to go back in and talk it through. And so we talked it through, and he too was like, I've never done that before. I'm never going to do it again. And making promises again, reminding me of how my dad has always made these different promises. And again, but I needed to believe that in that moment, that it won't happen again. So that was definitely a challenge for me.
So you're starting to recognize that you're repeating some of the same patterns as your mom, your dad.
Right? Oh, yes.
And it gets worse.
It does get worse. So I did end up getting married to Kevin. And, I thought things would change, like, I don't know why. Again, we moved. He's like, okay, maybe you being up in New York was the trigger. Like, maybe that was creating a lot of emotional imbalance and you were out of your element. Maybe we move back to Houston. What if you move back to Houston and you're with your friends and your family? We won't fight as much. That was the solution. So we moved back to Houston. And we moved back to Houston. We got married. And, for a little while, I thought things were humming along because he took anger management class. Things were going to get better. I mean, other than, him hitting the wall, putting holes in the walls and things like that, there was still like better the wall than me is my thought, right? However, once I got pregnant with Brandon, my second, I remember we got into a fight about, a lot of it, the fights are about, probably unimportant things. And I was going down the stairway and he was angry and he pushed me. And I was pregnant at that time, probably 6 months pregnant.
Oh, 6 months. You're pretty far along.
And so that was that moment of, again, like, I got to protect my kid. Yeah. And I called the cops and I said, you're never going to do that again. You're not going to hurt me or my kids. But again, we're like, okay, now I'm in my second marriage. If I didn't feel worthy, even before I married my first husband, I definitely didn't feel worthy now. Like, now was not good enough for anyone at that point. So again, it was more, I got to make this work. I got to sacrifice. I have to endure because, one, I'm already an embarrassment. I can't do this again. I can't go through another divorce. So I'm like, I'm gonna make it work. I'm gonna have to figure this out. And so after that, episode, I mean, I had Brandon, and it was just little things. I mean, I learned to bite my tongue. I learned how to just avoid conflict.
Walk on eggshells.
Walk on eggshells. But I mean, it could be anything. And I look back now and it's like, I really lost my voice and my identity and who I really was, because, he learned too, as someone who can break me down. He'll say things like, no one loves you.
So hurt.
You're a terrible mom.
Oh my goodness.
It's just things that really, to me, like, was made you feel even less valuable. Like the little that I had. I mean, I look back now, I'm like, wow, I allowed someone to get me to the point where I didn't even believe in myself. And so, fast forward, I was with him for a total of about 10 years. And it I guess the breaking point is when we got into such a big fight where he had me pinned down and where he was like choking me. And I mean, the way he looked, it was not him anymore.
Right.
And where he was like, he threatened to kill me at that point. I think once he said, I'm going to effing kill you, I think he and I both recognized that, one, it wasn't right. And that this could probably keep escalating to the point where he could hurt me or I can retaliate and hurt him. And I said, and is that what we really want? To have something happen to me where I can't, I'm not physically here anymore, or unable to take care of the kids. And then what's going to happen to him? You're going to go to jail. What's going to happen? Like the kids will be parentless. Like what will happen? And I think in that moment it was, like we need help. And we did go to counseling. And it just, to all that to say, I think I recognized that I couldn't do it anymore because I don't know what it was a trigger for him or for me. And I used to blame myself. Like if I would do this differently, or if I would not say this, or if I say these things differently, there's always something I had to do to figure out how do I change to change the outcome. And I realized it's not just me.
No.
It wasn't just me. And so the realization of I have to file for divorce again was so devastating for me.
Imagine.
Because here is another failure, and going back to that, I mean, but when my relationships were failing, in my career-wise, it was actually, I was outperforming, maybe I was burying myself in work, like, okay, I can't get things right at home, but at least I'm able to get it right at work. And no one even at work knew that I was dealing with all of this at home.
You were driven to not have the financial suffering that you had as a kid.
Correct. And like I thought if in a relationship, if, we were financially provided for and that we're good, that we won't have any problems. Like I associated a lot of the fights my parents had with some of the financial hardship that they experience. Being in America, not speaking the language, not having the education and all of that, right? And so I associated that with okay, these are why there's so many arguments and fights. But then I realized, no, we didn't have the financial issues in my second marriage. So why are we fighting so much?
So the final physical altercation that spurs you into the divorce then is going to be your major catalyst.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And I remember I was so far removed from my faith and my walk with Jesus. I'm done. I don't know what else to do. I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I don't know how to even move forward from this point. Do I end my life here and let the kids go with their dad? Maybe they're a better parent than I am. Like there's all these self-doubts. I definitely felt like I was not doing something right. And I remember that song by Carrie Underwood, Jesus Take the Wheel. I mean, it was just perfect timing when I saw a flyer that said, here's a church that's starting up in my neighborhood and no perfect people were allowed. The timing of it couldn't have been better because I definitely was not a perfect person. I at this point was like, I'm making a mess out of my life. I keep making these decisions that I think is good, but it turns out to be so bad for me. And I didn't know which route to take. So I ended up going to this church. And again, the last church I went in, have been in, was a Catholic church. And this new church was so different. It was, you know, you come in, there's like a lot of worship music to start it off. And then, you know, they dim the lights and I'm sitting in the back and I felt so comfortable in there because no one could see me. I was like, oh, this is great. You know, the shame was, you know, dissipated when I was there. No one understood or knew me. And it was more of a focus on how do I walk with Jesus again so that I can have a different path. Because again, like Jesus, just take the wheel. Like I'm giving you now. I've hit rock bottom. I felt I don't know what else to do. And so I was just hoping, you know, that he will lead me down this path. Yeah.
So I know that your journey to faith is so significant, and we cannot wait to be able to dive deep into that in our next episode. Stay tuned for that, and I promise you it's going to be incredible.
And I look forward to sharing that. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed this episode, please share, hit like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Feel free to email us at monomythdiaries@gmail.com with your monomyth and keep the conversations going.
Until next time, heroes, let's journey together through stories.